Imagine this scenario. A person is walking down the street, engrossed in their daily routine, when a stranger suddenly addresses them with words that cut deep. Perhaps these words target their appearance, casting a shadow on their self-image. Maybe they question their intrinsic worth, undermining their sense of self. Or perhaps, these words are aimed at destroying everything they have painstakingly built. What would be their reaction? Most people in such a moment would involuntarily flare up, overcome by anger. They would begin to desperately defend themselves, allowing turbulent emotions to override reason. However, what Machiavelli knew 500 years ago remains beyond the grasp of most even today. He who allows himself to be offended has already been defeated. The truth is, the moment a person reacts to a provocation, they have already lost. The instant they allow someone else to control their emotions, they are essentially handing over their inner strength on a silver platter. But what if there was another way? What if one could achieve a state of mind where no one, absolutely no one, could disturb their inner peace? Where insults bounce off like water droplets from a smooth stone? Where a person becomes so mentally invulnerable that others begin to fear their composure more than anyone's furious anger? This material is designed to teach precisely this art. It is not just a collection of tips and recommendations. These are profound, at times even dark, laws of mental mastery that Machiavelli himself would undoubtedly have used to maintain unwavering calm in a world consumed by constant chaos. By the time you finish studying this text, you will gain the knowledge of how to become a person whom nothing can disturb, who never loses composure, and who never gives anyone the satisfaction of witnessing their defeat. Machiavelli's principle of detachment. Before delving into these laws, it's essential to grasp one fundamental truth. People can only bother you when you give them permission to do so. Consider this. When someone utters an insult, the insult itself is merely a set of words, simple sounds emanating from another's mouth. The true power lies not in those words. It stems from your own reaction to them. Power begins where emotional reactions end. Most mistakenly believe that being unperturbed signifies weakness, passivity, or lack of will. They are profoundly mistaken. Indifference is not a sign of weakness. It is a display of dominance. It is the highest form of self-control and situational mastery. When you stop reacting to others' attempts to provoke you, you strip them of their power. You become the complete master of your own emotional state. You become dangerous, and that is precisely what we aim to make you. Dangerous in the best sense of the word. Dangerous because your reaction becomes unpredictable. Dangerous because you cannot be manipulated. Dangerous because you are in complete control of yourself. The following will present 10 dark laws of Machiavelli that will help you become unperturbed, unassailable, and truly unstoppable. Law 1. Anticipate disrespect before it manifests. A large portion of humanity walks through life genuinely believing in the triumph of justice. They harbor hopes for kindness, mutual respect, and that others will adhere to accepted rules. When reality deviates from these expectations, they are shocked and experience deep pain, completely unprepared for such developments. However, the great thinker Machiavelli clearly understood that acts of disrespect are not random incidents. They are a carefully considered strategy. People resort to them to test boundaries, establish control, and see if an opponent can be thrown off balance. When a person is prepared in advance for potential betrayals, envy, and biting ridicule, nothing can surprise them anymore. When they are mentally ready for the most contemptible acts people are capable of, their will becomes unshakable. Imagine this scenario. If someone walks through an unsafe neighborhood, they won't be surprised to witness a crime. They are already prepared for it, vigilant, and in a state of heightened readiness. Life, in essence, is a similar dangerous neighborhood. Yet, most people navigate it with their guard completely down, genuinely wondering why they are constantly hurt. Machiavelli once wisely stated, "A wise man does at once what a fool does at the end." A wise person prepares for disrespect in advance. A fool is caught off guard every time. When you expect others to try and provoke you, their attempts become easily predictable. When their actions become predictable, they completely lose all power over you. Such foresight does not make one cynical. It makes one a realist. It makes one prepared. It empowers one. From now on, assume that some people will try to disrespect you. Assume that some individuals will seek to break you. When you are ready for this, you can handle such challenges with icy calm. Law 2. Master the art of silence. Here's something most people often don't realize. Your silence holds far greater power than any response you could give. When someone tries to provoke you, when they insult, mock, or try to start an argument, they are looking for only one thing: your reaction. They crave to see your irritation. They want you to start justifying yourself. They desire to watch you lose control. Self-control is a key aspect in any life situation. A person's reaction to provocation often becomes a victory for the one who initiated it. Conversely, if a person remains silent, it can become their personal triumph. Think about those moments when someone intentionally tried to elicit a strong reaction, but received only complete silence in return. What happened in that situation? Most likely, the provocateur began to feel awkward. Perhaps they even redoubled their efforts, still striving for the desired effect. Or, even more likely, doubts about their own actions and intentions began to arise in their mind. This is precisely where the colossal power of silence lies. By denying the opponent the emotional reaction they crave, you force them to question everything. Did their insult miss its mark? Was the target of the provocation much stronger than anticipated? Or perhaps they are plotting something hidden. Silence, like a veil, creates mystery. Mystery, in turn, becomes a source of fear. And fear, paradoxically, can breed respect. Niccolò Machiavelli, the great thinker of the past, once stated that, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." Thus, maintaining silence makes a person unpredictable. And unpredictable individuals are often perceived as dangerous. Dangerous people, as a rule, command respect. However, there's a crucial nuance here. The silence in question should not be a sign of offense or confusion, where one simply doesn't know what to say. It must be a conscious choice, a decision not to engage in dialogue. The difference between these two types of silence is colossal. The silence of an offended person screams of their weakness and vulnerability, whereas the silence of someone who consciously chooses not to respond whispers of their inner strength and self-control. How does one develop such powerful silence? The answer is simple: through constant practice. The next time someone tries to throw you off balance, try counting to 10 before uttering a single word. Then, you can extend that time to 20. And finally, try to remain silent altogether. Observe your opponent's reaction. Notice how they begin to feel awkward. See how this silence crushes their ego far more effectively than even the most biting insult. Law 3. Never let your emotions betray you. Fury, tears, excessive justifications, and explanations all serve as clear signs of weakness that ill-wishers will undoubtedly use against you. The moment you display uncontrolled emotional outbursts, you inadvertently reveal your vulnerable points, showing exactly where you can be hurt. You provide your adversaries with a map of your weaknesses. Unfortunately, most people do not realize this simple yet fundamental truth. It's important to understand that this isn't about completely eliminating emotions. It's about learning to control them. There's a huge difference between feeling anger and displaying it. A true master feels everything happening within, but shows absolutely nothing externally. A novice, on the other hand, displays all their emotions, having no control over them. When someone tries to provoke you, you might feel a wave of fury rising in your chest. Your heart might start pounding. Your hands might tremble. This is completely normal. It's a natural human reaction. However, what distinguishes a strong person from a weak one is what happens next. A weak person allows these emotions to completely dictate their actions and behaviors. A strong person acknowledges the presence of these emotions, but then consciously decides how they should react to the situation. Machiavelli, the great thinker of his time, once uttered the wise words, "Since love and fear can hardly exist together, if we must choose between them, it is far safer to be feared than loved." A profound truth lies within this statement concerning the art of emotional control. When you master your emotions, you become unpredictable to those around you. If people cannot foresee your emotional reactions, they lose the ability to manipulate you. And when the lever of manipulation disappears, a sense of fear inevitably takes its place. Therefore, even if a storm of passions rages within, external calm becomes a display of true dominance and genuine strength. There is an effective technique that can help achieve this state. The moment you feel strong emotions building up, it is recommended to take a deep breath and imagine yourself as an external observer of the situation, as if it were happening to someone else. Then ask yourself, what advice would be given to that person? How would it be desirable for them to react? Such mental detachment creates the necessary space for a conscious choice of reaction, instead of automatically succumbing to impulse. It is important to always remember, emotions are merely information, not direct instructions for action. They signal what is happening but do not dictate how you should act. Law 4. Control the frame, never defend. This is the mistake that causes most people to lose influence. They too often go on the defensive. When someone allows themselves to insult or question your character, the natural instinct seems to be to defend yourself. There arises a need to explain the error of others' judgments, justify your actions, and affirm your self-worth. However, Machiavelli perfectly understood that an overly defensive stance is nothing less than an admission of weakness. Consider this statement. Truly strong individuals do not need to constantly justify themselves. Confident people have no need to explain every decision they make. Powerful figures do not have to prove their significance to everyone who dares to question it. When you take a defensive position, you inadvertently start playing by someone else's rules, accepting the frame of the situation proposed by your opponent. By doing so, you acknowledge that the other person's opinion carries enough weight to influence your own behavior. Instead, you must seize control of the frame. You should force others to play by your rules. How is this achieved? Instead of defending, you should change the frame. Instead of explaining, you need to redirect the conversation or situation. Instead of engaging in tedious proofs of your own righteousness, you choose a tactic of detachment and slight disdain. For example, when someone challenges you, saying, "You're not smart enough for this job," instead of immediately listing all your qualifications and achievements, you could simply say, "Interesting opinion," and then skillfully change the subject. Or, even more tellingly, you could just laugh without saying a word. Such behavior demonstrates a complete unwillingness to enter the proposed game, the goal of which is to put the interlocutor on the defensive. In this way, you clearly communicate that the other person's opinion does not warrant a serious, detailed response. The great thinker Machiavelli, who deeply understood human nature, once stated, "Everyone sees what you appear to be, few feel what you really are." Following this principle, when an individual refuses to take a defensive stance in the face of every trivial attack, they inevitably begin to appear much stronger and more self-assured to those around them. The ability to control the frame, or context, of each interaction transforms you into the dominant force in any discussion, allowing you to set the tone and direction of the conversation. However, this does not mean that one should completely abandon asserting their interests or rights. On the contrary, it signifies the ability to consciously choose when and how to react, guided solely by one's own interests and strategic goals, rather than momentary emotional impulses. Law 5. You must detach yourself from all opinions about yourself, whether complimentary or critical. This principle, it must be admitted, often causes deep confusion for most people accustomed to different social norms. Indeed, an individual should strive for complete detachment from all judgments concerning their person, both positive and negative. It is a common misconception that the main problem lies in excessive preoccupation with criticism. But this is only half the truth. The other, equally significant part of the problem is an excessive dependence on praise. When a person needs flattering words to maintain their well-being and self-respect, they become just as vulnerable and fragile as someone crushed by any criticism. They become dependent on others' opinions, which begin to define their self-esteem. Both praise and criticism, in this context, act as invisible chains. They both bind the individual to external approval, depriving them of true freedom. Both of these forces, praise and criticism, inevitably strip a person of their inner support and spiritual strength. Just consider, if you need constant validation from others to feel good about yourself, you will inevitably have to worry about what those same people might say negatively. Dependence on compliments makes a person extremely vulnerable in the face of any disapproval, turning their emotional state into a hostage of external circumstances. A truly strong person builds their life on a solid internal foundation, their unshakable values, their unwavering discipline, their own internal compass. This, of course, does not call for completely ignoring all feedback. It means that an individual evaluates incoming information not from the perspective of whether it evokes pleasant or unpleasant emotions, but based on its practical usefulness. Does this criticism help one improve, acquire new skills, or correct mistakes? Then it should be listened to and utilized. Is this praise accurate, well-founded, and motivating for further achievements? Then it can be accepted and appreciated. However, neither should gain power over one's emotional state or define one's self-esteem. Niccolò Machiavelli, the great thinker and politician, once wisely remarked, "The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him." This profound thought applies to every person striving for inner harmony. It is important to surround yourself only with individuals whose opinions genuinely hold significant weight. These are people who possess a deep understanding of your essence, sincerely wish you well, and whose wisdom has been repeatedly tested by time. All other voices, all their judgments and comments, are merely meaningless noise that should be treated accordingly, without allowing it to penetrate your consciousness and influence your self-perception. When a person reaches a state where they no longer need external evaluation and approval, they gain true, profound freedom. When they cease to fear external criticism and condemnation, they become truly strong, unshakable in their convictions and decisions. To experience this for yourself, you can try a useful exercise. For 1 week, try to completely forego seeking approval from others. This means not fishing for compliments, not asking if people liked your work, and not checking the number of likes your social media posts have garnered. It's important to carefully track your feelings during this period, noticing how such behavior changes your inner state and external reactions, and also to note how much mental energy is liberated when your mind is not in constant pursuit of external approval. Law 6. Reward control, punish reaction. The essence of this law lies in training your own mind, much like training a champion athlete to achieve peak performance. Every time an individual demonstrates the ability to remain calm and not succumb to provocation when someone tries to throw them off balance, they must reward themselves for this display of self-control. Conversely, every time a person reacts emotionally, even though they could have remained in control and maintained clarity of thought, a disciplinary consequence should be applied to oneself. It is important to emphasize that this is not about harshness or self-flagellation, but about purposefully creating the right incentives that will encourage desired behavior and deter undesirable reactions. The human brain learns and forms new behavioral patterns through the consequences of its actions. If maintaining calmness is associated with pleasant feelings, and emotional reactions with unpleasant ones, the brain will naturally begin to prioritize calmness over impulsive reactions. How does this work in practice? When you manage to keep your composure in a provocative situation, it's important to do something pleasant for yourself. This could be a small purchase you've long wanted, a relaxing bath, watching a favorite movie, or any other activity that brings pleasure and a sense of reward. If, however, you react emotionally when you could have remained in control, you should do something that requires discipline and stepping out of your comfort zone. For example, an extra workout, taking a cold shower, skipping entertainment for the evening, or any other action that slightly disrupts your usual comfortable state. Over time, the human subconscious begins to associate maintaining serenity with feelings of pleasure, while a turbulent reaction is linked to discomfort. This process transforms self-control from a forced effort into an automatic mechanism. Most people, striving to develop self-possession, rely exclusively on willpower. However, willpower is a finite resource. It depletes like melting ice and fails precisely when it is most urgently needed. Wise individuals approach the formation of self-control differently. They build entire systems that allow them to make the right choice most easily. Niccolò Machiavelli once shrewdly observed, "Men are so simple and so ready to obey present necessities, that he who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived." Do not deceive yourself with the illusion that you can endlessly rely on willpower alone. It is far more effective to create well-thought-out systems that automatically strengthen inner power. The ultimate goal of this approach is to reach a state where remaining calm feels absolutely natural, and reacting turbulently feels entirely alien. Ideally, the default reaction to any provocation should be icy self-possession. This, of course, requires significant time and unwavering consistency, but the reward for these efforts is the attainment of literal invulnerability. Law 7. Use indifference as a weapon. Many tend to believe that when faced with attacks, it is necessary to fight back. They consider it their duty to defend themselves, engage in arguments, or prove their opponent wrong. However, true masters understand a deeper truth. The less concern one shows, the more the attacker's anxiety increases. The more indifferent someone becomes, the more desperately others crave their reaction. Indifference can frustrate manipulators far more than any outburst of anger. When a person gives in to anger, they are essentially giving manipulators what they seek: confirmation of their ability to control others' emotions. But by demonstrating indifference, they clearly communicate that manipulators have no power over them. Imagine someone who genuinely doesn't care what others think of them. How do people usually react to such a person? Typically, they either respect them or desperately try to attract their attention. This is the immense power of indifference. When someone allows themselves to be insulted, and in response receives complete indifference, not coldness or rudeness, but merely a sincere lack of interest, it is devastating to the aggressor's ego. They expected to see anger, counted on offense, waited for some reaction. Instead, they receive nothing. They are treated as if they have absolutely no significance. Such a lack of reaction becomes far more impactful and eloquent than any words that could have been spoken. This is a key point that should be made. However, the crucial aspect is that it refers to genuine indifference, not feigned. Society, as a rule, unerringly recognizes this difference. Imitating indifference often gives itself away through excessive effort, creating an impression of artificial detachment. Genuine indifference, however, feels like an inner, effortless power. The natural question arises: how can one cultivate this true indifference? A person concentrates their attention on those aspects of existence that hold genuine significance for them. They direct their emotional energy towards their own goals, strengthening relationships, and personal growth. For such an individual, there are far more weighty subjects for reflection than the opinions or judgments of strangers, fleeting observers. The great thinker Niccolò Machiavelli once uttered wise words: "A lion cannot protect himself from traps, and a fox cannot protect himself from wolves. Therefore, one must be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves." One should display the cunning of a fox when others try to ensnare them in webs of provocation. It is important not only to unerringly recognize this trap, but also to completely bypass it. Attempts by others to manipulate or control one's will should be met with complete indifference. The 8th law speaks of the necessity of redirecting energy into creative force. Whenever someone attempts to provoke, insult, or humiliate another, they unwittingly transmit a certain amount of energy. The key question is how the individual intends to use this energetic flow. Often, most individuals waste it, gaining no benefit. They expend this inner power on anger, fruitless arguments, and anxious reflections on the opinions of others. Ultimately, they exhaust themselves fighting insignificant, trivial battles that yield no substantial results. However, truly wise individuals know how to take this released energy and purposefully direct it towards strengthening their inner power, improving skills, and building a personal empire of success. If someone claims that a person will never achieve desired success, let that assertion become a powerful catalyst for their work ethic, pushing them towards even greater accomplishments. If their appearance becomes the object of ridicule, let this serve as additional motivation for active fitness and body care. In cases where doubts about their intellectual abilities arise, let this stimulate them to deeper and more diligent learning. Thus, every derogatory word or insult can be transformed into valuable fuel for growth, but only on the condition that the individual himself does not allow this fire to consume and destroy him from within. It is worth looking at this situation from the following perspective. When someone attacks an individual, they are essentially revealing certain aspects of their own personality. the aggressor unwittingly demonstrates their personal insecurities, deep-seated fears, and vulnerable sides. Furthermore, such attacks provide valuable information about what, in the opinion of the attackers, is capable of causing the individual the most pain or discomfort. This information must be used wisely. If opponents perceive a person's appearance as their vulnerable point, then that is precisely what should be transformed into an undeniable strength. If they believe that their skills are their weakness, then the task is to bring those skills to such a level of perfection that makes them absolutely undeniable. One should not waste one's strength on fruitless skirmishes with insignificant individuals. It is much wiser to direct this energy towards one's own development, achieving such power that any of their attacks become utterly meaningless. As Machiavelli once remarked, expressing his convictions, "I am not interested in maintaining the status quo. I want to overthrow it." This is precisely how one should act. Crush their expectations, refute their attempts to shackle you. Every aggressive foray must be perceived as an impetus for further ascent. This is the fundamental difference between victims of circumstance and true victors. Victims allow attacks to weaken their spirit and resolve, while victors use these same attacks for their own strengthening. Whenever someone says something negative to you, instead of taking a defensive stance or succumbing to despondency, it is advisable to ask yourself, how can I use this as additional motivation for improvement? Thus, every critic becomes an unwitting mentor, and any attack becomes a source of inspiration. Law 9 states, let go with cold calculation. Most people tend to believe that when someone offends them, there are only two paths, either to forgive and forget, or to seek revenge. However, Machiavelli understood perfectly that there is a third, more far-sighted option: cold, sober calculation. Revenge is a tool, not an immutable obligation. There is no need to seek revenge on everyone who has wronged you. There is no need to prove your strength by engaging in every battle offered. Sometimes, revenge can indeed be beneficial. It can protect your reputation, serve as a warning to others, or align with your long-term interests. In such cases, one should strike later, when possessing an undeniable advantage. But far more often, revenge costs more than its potential benefit. It irrevocably takes your time, drains your energy, and distracts attention from building your own success. A truly strong person independently determines when to engage, and when it is better to disengage. They never allow their emotions to make this decision for them. Here's how to make this calculation. Will this bring me any specific benefit? Does it advance my goals? Will it protect something truly important to me? Will it teach others to avoid confrontation with me in the future? If the answer to these questions is affirmative, then strategically plan your response. If the answer is negative, then completely let go of the situation. This is not about showing weakness or passivity. It is solely about strategy. The point is not to allow other people to dictate how you use your limited time and energy. Machiavelli once expressed the thought, "Nothing great was ever achieved without danger." However, he also realized that not every danger is worth confronting. Not every battle is worth fighting. Not every person is worthy of your attention. A master, following their deep strategic convictions, is very selective in choosing their battles. They engage in combat only when they see a clear benefit, and they retreat just as decisively if circumstances are not in their favor. Often, ordinary people allow their pride to dictate such decisions. They get drawn into conflict based on a false sense of duty, rather than cold strategic calculation. However, pride has its price, and a very high one. It makes a person predictable, depriving them of tactical advantage. It is also a source of weakness. True strength lies in cold, impartial calculation, which allows one to maintain control over the situation. The 10th law states, through detachment, one achieves invulnerability. People can only cause distress when they manage to find a vulnerable point in your armor. This happens when they discover something so significant to you that you are willing to sacrifice your inner peace to protect it. But when a person achieves genuine detachment, when nothing external can disturb their inner harmony, they become absolutely untouchable by external influences. This does not mean that a person becomes indifferent to the entire surrounding world. On the contrary, it implies that they do not allow their attachments to become a source of vulnerability for manipulation. It is perfectly possible to genuinely love one's family, without allowing threats against them to dictate your decisions. One can be proud of their work, but not allow criticism to destroy inner confidence. One can passionately desire success, but not let failures crush their spirit. Detachment is a state where a person has preferences, but no dependencies. They desire something, but it is not vitally necessary for their basic sense of self-worth and inner peace. When nothing external can control your inner peace, people lose their power over you. When they cannot manipulate your emotions, they lose the ability to manipulate your behavior. This makes a person dangerous, but in the best sense of the word. Not dangerous in terms of harming others, but dangerous in that others cannot harm them. Recall the most invulnerable person you know. What exactly makes them so? It's probably not that they simply don't care about anything. The essence is that they do not allow their care or attachment to make them desperate, needy, or easily controllable. Machiavelli once very insightfully remarked, "He who is highly esteemed is not easily conspired against." When a person demonstrates invulnerability, they inevitably command the respect of others. Perhaps they do not always feel warmth towards them, but they invariably acknowledge their strength. They respect their self-control, their unwavering independence. And this respect is undoubtedly more valuable than fleeting affection, as it possesses greater longevity and depth. To cultivate this valuable detachment, it is highly recommended to practice taking things lightly in various life situations. One should enjoy their successes without allowing them to enslave them, without becoming excessively attached to them. It is necessary to learn from one's own failures, but without allowing them to destroy inner peace and aspirations. It is also extremely important to value one's relationships with others, but at the same time avoid desperate dependence on their approval. The main goal of this approach is to reach a state where the individual is fully engaged in the whirlwind of life, but their happiness does not depend on any specific outcome of events. If a person reaches this cherished point, they acquire something truly unique, something most people will never possess, a deep understanding of how to become truly imperturbable. These 10 laws are not just abstract theoretical constructs. They are a powerful practical arsenal that can be used, starting today, to transform oneself into a person who cannot be shaken, manipulated, or controlled by the actions of other people. It is important to always remember that genuine indifference is not a sign of weakness. On the contrary, it is a manifestation of sovereignty, a symbol of inner power. It is like a crown that only truly strong-willed people can wear. When someone tries to provoke you tomorrow, remember law number 2, and respond with powerful, expressive silence. If someone dares to criticize you next week, refer to law number 5, and maintain detachment from others' opinions. And when someone tries to draw you into their personal drama next month, remember law number 10, and remain invulnerable to external influences. However, there is one critically important point. Knowledge not backed by action remains completely useless. These laws gain power only when actively applied. They can change a person's life only if they change their own behavior. Start with one law. Choose the one that resonates most deeply. Practice it for the next week, striving for complete mastery, and then add another. And before you realize it, you will transform into the person everyone will be thinking about. The one who maintains astonishing calm when everyone else loses their minds. The one who seems immune to the chaos that destroys others. You will become truly invulnerable. You will be cold, calm, invulnerable. Weak people tend to react, strong people respond. Masters, however, need to do neither. They simply exist in a state of unwavering strength. Who will each of us become?